Hey fermenters, Austin Durant here, and I'm going to be talking about how to make umeboshi, which is a Japanese pickled plum. And if you've ever seen them, they are quite the delicacy. I've got some here. I measure this ferment in years. So basically we've got 2 year, 4 year, etc. So what I have now is the very last one of an umeboshi from the year 2015. Remember 2015? Life was so much simpler. Anyway, so this is the last of that jar, but I have other vintages throughout that I've just kind of made it consistently throughout. So this is a jar packed in 2017. Actually, I usually will do a double batch. So these both were packed in 2017. So this is a plum that I made in 2015. So it's if you just joined, it's the very last of this batch. So farewell, sayonara. If you've ever eaten them just straight up, they're extremely salty. They've got a lot of complexity to the flavor. They're meant to be served over things like rice, or I really just eat them straight out of the jar, quite honestly. But that's why I still have so many left. But so they're quite a delicacy. The ones that you can find in supermarkets these days, most of them are, they're sort of sped up. They're not sort of fermented a couple of years. They usually have extra artificial coloring and that sort of thing. I'm going to show you how to do it the traditional Japanese way. I'm going to go ahead and give this a taste. And there's a 5-year umeboshi, and it's just mostly salt. Of course, that's the first flavor you're going to get, but there's some sweetness there, there's some sourness. Very, very, very tasty. I'm glad I could share this last 5-year-old umeboshi with you guys, but guess what? We're going to make more. So before I get into it, I don't know if there's any umeboshi nerds out there. I don't really consider myself one, but the topic has come up as to whether or not this is technically a ferment, and that's because we add quite a lot of salt to the plums, and if you add enough salt, basically nothing is going to survive that salty environment. Certain microbes are tolerant of salt. That's why when we make a pickle brine, for example, we usually make a 4 or 5% strength brine. And that way the halophilic or salt tolerant microbes do their thing and the others stay out. Well, this is somewhere around 12, 15, even 20% salt. So when you get up to those levels, this might really just be a salt cure of sorts. So again, if you've ever made preserved citrus like lemons or limes, same deal, 25% salt in some cases. So it's arguable whether microbes survive that. So let us get started. So the ingredients for umeboshi are mainly ume, which is the word umeboshi comes from. And an ume is a specific, it's in the apricot family, plum apricot. And it is this tiny little plum. This is a full-size plum. You can kind of see this one's kind of blushing a little bit, just like you would expect a plum or an apricot to do. They're pretty inedible to eat fresh like this. So they're typically not eaten fresh. They're grown specifically to make this ancient salt preserve called umeboshi. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these fresh ume, and the season is very short here in the northern hemisphere, late spring, maybe early summer. So I saw these in about May. I went back to the Asian market that I got these from today, and they weren't there. So again, the season's very short, but of course, as weather moves northbound, you might be able to find them in, I'm in Southern California, so further north you go, maybe there's farmers that are growing them. So point being, go to an Asian market if you're seeking them out. That's going to be at least give you a lead on that. So start off with fresh ume, and really what we're going to be doing is just sterilizing the environment, which is unusual. I don't usually bother to the degree with other ferments sterilizing. But in this case, the tradition is very, that's the tradition. So who am I to buck tradition? Or as they say, learn the rules, then you can break them. Well, I'm still in the midst of learning the rules, so I'm going to follow them for now. So in order to sterilize this particular dish, what we're going to do is use something very high alcohol. So this is vodka, and what it's going to do is it's going to just get rid of any errant microbes that we don't want to join the party, whether that be on the fruit themselves or in the fermenting vessel, which is what we've got here. So I'm going to pack all these into a quart-sized jar, or as many as I can. So basically what I'm going to do is, it's already a clean jar, but we're going to take that extra step of sterilizing it. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of vodka in and just sort of swish it around. All right, so my jar is more or less sterilized. The next step is to actually pick the fruit. Select the fruit that's going to go in the jar. So, unfortunately, I bought these about 3 weeks ago, and I put them in the fridge, did my best to keep them preserved, but they have ripened. When I first bought them, they were pretty hard and dark green. Some of them have ripened. Again, they ripen like other stone fruits. They turn yellow, they blush, and in some cases, they simply just get a little bit of mold on them. So we definitely want to remove these guys from the party. The thought being that that little smushy part's going to harbor microbes that can throw off the whole situation. To be authentically Japanese, if it has any kind of scar on it at all, it's again a candidate where that can harbor those germs. So theoretically, we're getting just the perfect ones, perfect of the perfect. So that's usually going to again be the best way to have success. So we've got an example here. You can see it's free of blemishes, and also the stem, the part where it meets the tree, has been sort of removed. And here's an example of one that hasn't been removed yet. You can kind of see the little pieces still in there. So we also want to remove those too. So this one's ready to go. But what I'm going to do is again make another small bowl here, and I'm going to add some vodka to it. So we're going to basically sterilize the ume as well. So I'm just going to take this, and in batches, I'm going to kind of cull the herd here and only find the best ume. The other trick that I learned is if you do come across one that's got the little stem, take a toothpick and just sort of dig that stem out without, we don't want to puncture the fruit itself. So this one, again, it's got some discoloration, but they're nothing I would call like a fingernail or blemish. So basically that's what I'm doing for the next few minutes here. This can be somewhat of a patience-inducing process, let's just say, a meditation, if you will. So take your time with this, because after all, this sucker is going to sit in the jar for a couple of years. So a few extra minutes of your time making sure that you're picking the right fruit will pay dividends in the years to come. So again, is this really a ferment? I don't know. It's a very deliberate and long process. So this is part one. Essentially, there will be 3 total parts. One will take place in about a month, because you'll see when we put up the jar, that's going to sit there for about a month. Phase 2 is going to be letting them naturally dry in a warm, sunny environment. That's why umeboshi is made pretty much throughout the summer. So the idea is to find a 3-day stretch of dry, hot weather, usually July or August in the Northern Hemisphere, and let them basically sort of desiccate, they'll dry out. Then you take those and put them in the jar to become future umeboshi. See here, it's going to continue to kind of dig these out, and so just let these kind of roll around in the vodka bath for a while, getting nice and lit up before we put them in the jar. So the other key ingredient in this, besides salt, is shiso. So shiso is a leaf. Got a little spider friend here. So I just fresh picked these from my garden. So the spider was not informed. So I'll have to let it kind of just do its thing. But shiso is another name for sesame or perilla. So that you can kind of see this is what a sesame leaf looks like, a perilla leaf, and it's this particular variety is called red shiso because, well, it grows, the leaves are red specifically. And it's used to make a very beautiful brine color. So that's also used in other parts of Japanese cooking. But for our purposes, I got a hold of the plant maybe 2 years ago. And it just, once you plant it once in your garden, you never have to worry about it again. It seems like it's prolific as basil, like it just goes to seed, it drops the seed, the next spring you don't have to do anything, it just sort of takes care of itself. So anyway, so that's shiso. So what we want to do is prepare the shiso. I've already rinsed it off. All right, so we got our shiso leaves. These also need to be wash to the extent that you can, but it's a plant, so still going to have residual stuff from the environment that I grew in. Gonna already sort of rinse them, and now I basically just want to salt them down too, just to start to get them to wilt a little bit. So I'm just going to use plain old sea salt. I pre-picked some of the leaves here. You can kind of see they're all together. Do a quick check, make sure there's no more critters. So again, I'm just going to liberally salt the leaves here, and they'll begin to wilt as we're working. I think it's very difficult to actually oversalt them, but you can certainly undersalt them, because remember, this is going to be a long stay in the jar, and so we want to make sure that they're preserved well. And basically what I'm going to do is start adding to the jar in layers. So what we're going to do is we're going to add one layer of shiso, one layer of plums, and then kind of salt the top and sort of repeat that. So we're just going to make basically a multiple layer system here. All right, so I'm just kind of massaging the shiso leaves right now, just kind of wilt them a little bit. I can massage them kind of like you would sauerkraut, but again, they're pretty tender leaves, so you don't need to totally mash them up. But you can kind of see. All right, so I got my my plums, the first round. So basically, I'm just going to take them and drip dry them a little bit, and then just start adding them to the jar. All right, so I'm just going to get one layer down. I think I can squeeze one more. Yeah, one more in there. So again, doesn't need to be like totally symmetrical, but just like when you're building your pickle jar, if it's flat, then it kind of makes it easier to get to the next layer. So you can kind of see nice tight pack of the first layer. Now I'm going to take a few shiso leaves and then just put them on here. All right, so I'm just going to kind of pack it, and then I'm going to add salt. So I've pre-measured the amount of salt that I'm going to use based on the weight of the plums. So I had about 800 grams of plums, and I'm going to use a 12% brine, 12% strength. So 800 times 12, 96 grams. So that's sort of the total amount that I'm going to add for the whole batch. So basically I could just sort of dole that out, sprinkle a little bit on each layer as I go. This one's definitely mushy, it's a no-go, so I get rid of it. Throw it in the compost pile. And just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm just sort of digging out that little stem and getting rid of it. All right, so I've got my first layer, which again is ume, shiso, and salt, and I'm just going to repeat that. All right, so I've got my next layer of plums. Now I take some of the leaves, make sure there's no spiders in here. I just picked these from my garden. I already had to evict a couple of spiders. I'm excited because this is the first year I actually have real red shiso. In years past, I've either only found green shiso, which will still impart flavor, but it won't impart that very typical umeboshi color. And then I found some that are sort of a hybrid. They were green on the front of the leaf and purple on the back. But this is the first year I'm using sort of real, full-on red shiso. Right, go ahead and add another layer of salt. And sort of repeat the process here. All right, so I got my next batch of plums. Again, we're layering the jar in layers. Here's another one where the stem is pretty obvious. Just kind of pop it out with a toothpick. Put it in the vodka bath. So we are, once this is all packed, we are going to also mush it down with mechanical pressure with weights. So that's also going to help with the extraction of the softening of the plums. Now, of course, that much salt that we're putting on the plums is going to do, through osmotic pressure, is going to do most of the extraction to sort of dry them out. And this feels like a good place to stop as far as where this jar is. So I've got a few more plums. I'll make a smaller jar as well. So now what I want to do is weigh it down. There's many things you can use as weights in the fermentation world. If you are more like the homespun DIY type, then find a jar like a small or any jar that's smaller than the diameter of the jar that you're fermenting in. Set it on top, and then use a towel or a dish towel to cover the whole system, because you want to keep flies and dust out. Otherwise, if you have specific weights, they make specific fermentation weights that go in and on top of this. So that's what I'm going to do now, is just find some weights, and then over time we're going to be pushing it down. We're going to let this sit for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And what will happen over that time is that the moisture will be drawn out of the plums, and it will make a very salty brine that's considered, it's called vinegar. So we might infer from that there is in fact a fermentation, because brine becomes vinegar with other types of ferments through fermentation, right? So acetobacter is the bacterium responsible for turning brine or metabolizing things into acetic acid, which is what vinegar is. So it's possible that there is a fermentation, but the point is it's called umeshu. It's considered vinegar, and we will use that in the subsequent steps. So for now, I'm going to pack this jar, put a weight on top of it, put my little fermentation lid, and then label with the date, and come back in about a month, and then we'll check on it. So that's it for part 1. If you guys have any Umeboshi related questions, feel free to leave comments if you're not live. Also, again, go to my YouTube channel. Fermenters Club is the name of the channel, and you can see the full 3-part series of how to make Umeboshi. So that's it for now, Instagram. Thanks very much, and we will see you next time. Keep on fermenting. Hey fermenters, Austin here, and I just wanted to give a quick update on our Umeboshi for 2020. So if you recall, in the last few videos of the series, we salted the plums and we soaked them and basically compressed them down. And over the last about 10 days or so, the brine has formed just on schedule. So as you can see, it's now completely submerged. I initially had this in 2 different jars, and then after it started to compress, I was able to recombine them back into a single jar, and now the liquid is up above the plums, which is where we want it to be. And you'll notice it's got a beautiful red color due to the red shiso. I have made these in previous years without the red shiso, and what we'll do, and I'll show you this in the next step, is we'll extract what's called umeshu, or the actual vinegar, the brine that was soaked in, and you can use that for other things, for marinades, etc. But anyway, this is a batch from previous year where I didn't use the full red shiso, and as you can see, it's a little bit brown. So I'll show you that later, but best practice is to let this sit for about 2 or 3 weeks in the brine, and then we will move on to our next step, which will be dehydrating the plums, and then we'll pack them again for a long, again, call it ferment. It's debatable whether this is actually a ferment versus a salt cure. But anyway, the end result hopefully will look something like this. So this is a batch I put up in 2017, and it is 3 years. I haven't even tasted this one yet. And again, I'll show you a couple of different techniques on sort of dry storing them versus storing them in the brine. So stay tuned.